You're watching the Law and Crime Network. Good morning again. Aaron Keller here along with you for the next hour as we break down the James Colley murder case in Florida. This is a case with a lot of twists and turns, folks. James Colley, a defendant accused of killing his wife, her best friend, in a home. Two other people were there for the chaos. They escaped and were able to testify. We have security camera footage of at least one of those people running from the scene, fearing for their life. That's a basic recap of what's coming up in the James Colley case and all the twists and turns of a divorce. But first, let's take a look at the schedule of what else we're covering here on the Law and Crime Network on the 28th of December. Coming up today, this is a day where the victim speaks. We're talking about the James Colley case with those victims able to testify. Also, Quincinio, Canada, Dewan Malazam, the accused killers of a U.S. Marine, and the Marine's now widow was able to testify. At 2 o'clock, we're talking about the Cody Lott case, and at 3 o'clock, the Sean Great case. So that's a look at what's ahead here on the Law and Crime Network today. We're going to get right into things, though, with the James Colley case from Florida. This is a case where a man and his wife were in the process of splitting up. There was a court hearing. Each of them had moved on to other lovers, even though the divorce was not final. And apparently, prosecutors say this defendant, James Colley, snapped after this hearing, after things were not going his way, and that's when he lashed out. Let's begin our review of this case with the prosecution's opening statement.
Fucking disgusting. That's what you are. Call me, or I'm going to come find you. Fucking whore. These are some of the last words Amanda Colley heard from her estranged husband on the morning she was murdered. Words sent in voicemails, threats sent over text message, and words yelled at her as she was shot and murdered on her bathroom floor. These murders occurred August 27th, 2015, in the neighborhood of Mirabella, which is in the rural Gulf Village area here in St. Johns County. It was just after 10:30 a.m. when the defendant, estranged from his wife and not allowed to have contact with her and not allowed to be within 500 feet of the home on Bellagio due to an injunction, committed these murders. Amanda Colley and Lindy Dobbins were not the only two individuals in the house that morning. Amanda's other friend, who I mentioned, Rachel Hendricks, was there, and a man Amanda was seeing, Lamar Dubberly, was also present. Rachel and Lamar lived. They escaped the defendant's attempts to kill them, and they will be here to testify and tell you exactly what they saw and what they heard that morning. In order to understand what was going on in
That's how prosecutors set up the case against James Colley. Now let's go straight to testimony from one of the surviving victims of this case, Rachel Hendricks. She's the one that was barricaded in a closet when the gunfire rang out.
G, what room in the house is this?
The master bedroom.
And is this clothing and items on the bed, is that part of the ransacking that she was describing?
Yes.
Photograph H. What does that show us?
The broken TV.
Was there damage to the TV in the living room as well that you were able to see?
Yes.
And so that shot comes through the door, and you actually feel it. You see it. Like you said, it grazed your arms.
It grazed my arm. I felt it. It was like a rubber arm.
And what happens next?
The door came in on me. I backed up and let the door come in on me. And Mr. Colley walked past the door straight over to Amanda. To Lindy, who was kneeling down. Heard Lindy say, "Oh my God, no!" And I ran out of the closet and heard a shot and ran out the front doors of the home.
Surviving victim Rachel Hendricks talking about this harrowing ordeal where she is holed up in a closet while her friend was being shot and killed. I'm still on the line with Ashley Willcott. She's a juvenile court judge and fellow host here at the Law and Crime Network. So, Ashley, just listening back to this testimony again, in the previous case, we had someone with a close call. We've got another one here, and our day of looking back at surviving victims testifying.
Yeah, can you imagine, Aaron? So she's captive in a house. I mean, she basically is hunted down in a closet where she can't escape. And here he comes with a gun loaded to bear, and she was there to help her friend out. So it's really scary. It's awful.
It is. I mean, and look at the chain of events here. We've got a family dispute where there's a divorce, and then James Colley apparently goes over to the house and just becomes enraged because he finds, of all things, sex toys that his wife had in the residence, and then he finds out through this process that she's got a new lover. And he's enraged by this, but wait a minute, Ashley, I mean, he also has moved on. He's also got a new lover, so why is he this enraged?
Yeah, because he's just, I don't know, something's not wired correctly, Aaron, because here's the other piece of this. Not only is he this enraged, she had already gotten a restraining order against him. And so you also have protection in terms of at least a court saying you don't get to go around her, don't get near her. But in spite of that, he still got this enraged. I can't explain criminal behavior.
Neither can I. Look, we're going to be talking a lot more about this case when we come back, but also at the tail end of a break here on the Law and Crime Network, we're going to talk about this case out of Colorado where a fiance is missing and the other fiance is arrested on suspicion of murder. The missing woman, Kelsey Barrett, has not been found, but there was a court hearing yesterday that we need to discuss about what's going to happen with the kid. That when we come back here on Law and Crime. Welcome back to Law and Crime yet again, folks. We're talking about the James Colley case from Florida, and we'll get back to that in just a minute. But first, an update in the disappearance of a woman from Colorado. Fiancée Kelsey Barrett disappeared on Thanksgiving. She hasn't been seen since then. Authorities believe her fiancé, Patrick Frazee, is involved in her disappearance and probably her death. They arrested him. He's charged with solicitation to commit first-degree murder. The question now is what happens to the one-year-old child that this couple shared. Ashley Willcott is a juvenile court judge. She handles matters like this. So, Ashley, let's talk about this case very quickly. You've got the mother missing, the father under arrest. Authorities are being very tight-lipped in Colorado, just as they were with the Chris Watts case. And ethically, that's a good thing. They're not leaking things because they know that this is a high-profile case. They're trying to be fair to the defendant. Based on the charges, they must have something. They've said that they believe that this poor woman was killed in the home. They must have something for that as well. But what happens to the one-year-old child? We know that there was a custody discussion in court. Take it from there.
All right, so here's the good news. As a judge, here's what I see happen in these cases fairly often, and that is because of the criminal investigation, because they don't know or haven't said exactly if anyone else is involved or not, frequently the child can come into the state's custody, and here in Georgia that's called DFACS, the Department of Family and Children's Services. The better case scenario in all cases in which there's a situation like this is that a relative get custody. So I'm relieved in this case that her parents have temporary legal custody of this child. By having that custody, they can take care of the child's medical needs. If anything else comes up, that's great news. From my perspective as a judge, that's where that child needs to be in this circumstance.
Police are basically still trying to look for evidence in this case, trying to find exactly what happened to this woman. We know that her phone apparently was pinging off a tower in Idaho. She had a friend or a relative there. She was a flight instructor, so she was relatively mobile. Does that add to the mystery here, or are these red herrings and the fiancé, as authorities have charged, is really the one that's behind this?
Listen, I've covered this story from the beginning with Crime Online, and here's the thing that bothered me the whole time about this fiancé. You may recall, Aaron, before he cooperated with police or shared any information, he hired a lawyer. That was a red flag to me to say, why would you hire a lawyer up front if you're looking for your fiancé, who you didn't even report was missing? So I think all those other things, she's a traveler, she travels as a flight attendant, all those things I think are red herrings.
Exactly. We're going to move along now to talk about the James Colley case from Florida. We're going to listen now to the chief medical examiner talking about the injuries that victim Amanda Colley sustained when authorities say her own husband, James Colley, this defendant, was basically gunning her down in an ambush-style raid.
Then it would not be received prior defensive injuries on the hands and legs, which means that if the person was rendered paralyzed, we would say, well, that wound was received after all the injuries to the hands and legs, because that person was still able to defend themselves by putting the extremities in front of the weapon. So we know that at that point, the injuries to the hands and legs were received first. So in that kind of logic, we can actually extrapolate and scientifically guess which is the order of the wounds, but not for every single wound.
Okay. And so there's some, would clothing have the effect of preventing that stippling, as you were indicating, there would be evidence of a close range gunshot? Would that have the effect of preventing some of that material from tattooing the skin, as you described?
Clothing would prevent or filter out the stippling or that cloud of hot gas coming out and hitting the skin, causing the stippling, would be filtered out. And the contact range could never be filtered out. That would be always seen, even if somebody's shot through the clothing. However, the close range would be diminished in appearance. It could appear as distant.
Right. And with regard to all these injuries, just so I don't have to ask you the question with each one, was there any evidence on any of the injuries of a contact or close distance range?
No, I have not seen any evidence of that.
When the bullet, were you able to determine sort of the track of the wound here?
Testimony there from the medical examiner about the types of wounds that wife Amanda Colley suffered when James Colley, the husband she was in the process of leaving, came over with a gun, started shooting, hunted her down, and ultimately killed her. Juvenile Court Judge Ashley Willcott is still with me here on the Law and Crime Network. So, Ashley, look, what I'm thinking when I watch this is when you hear people go earmuffs because they don't want to hear something, he was plugging his ears through all of this testimony about what he was accused of doing to his wife.
Yeah. Again, I cannot explain criminal behavior or the way they think. It's unbelievable to me that he could literally hunt her down, do this, hear about the tattooing because of how close he was to her when he actually executed her, and yet doesn't want to hear it. You did it, but, criminal defendants, I can't always explain their behaviors.
Well, one of the things he's trying to say is that he was depressed because she was leaving him and he was losing a lot in the process, and then he started taking this mix of drugs, and that he was at the convenience store. I think there might have been alcohol involved in this too. So you've got this cocktail of all these different drugs going around in his head. Is he trying to send a message to the jury that, look, this was my body but not my mind, and now I just can't face it and therefore have sympathy upon me?
Maybe. So whatever is what I say to that defense, because a lot of people get depressed in those circumstances, and guess what? They don't kill anyone. But having said that, you are right. And he does claim, hey, I was on Ambien and that was my defense and that's why I did this. I wasn't in my right mind, which would indicate, okay, then when I do hear about what I did, I can't even stand to listen because I was so out of my mind when I did it, didn't realize I was doing it. Now listening to the testimony about the gunshot wounds, this is pretty bad. So that may be part of the reason.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, thinking back at this case, the one most memorable thing that I remember going back on it is that footage of the one victim running from the house. But look, Judge Ashley Willcott, we know you have to hit the road. Happy New Year's. I'm not going to see you, I think, until New Year's Day.
That's right. Happy New Year's to you. Enjoy.
Appreciate it. Well, here in Manhattan, we get to watch the ball fall and whatnot. But look, we're going to take a break here on the Law and Crime Network. We're going to be back with more on this defense theory that this drug cocktail is what led James Colley to go on this ambush-style raid, killing 2 in Florida. That in just a moment.